Women, I think, often will, because you are highly attuned emotionally, it's essentially a feminine test where you're trying to see, is this man's resolve stronger than my emotion? And most men misunderstand this and misunderstand how vitally important this dynamic is for you to create a healthy, vibrant marriage where you guys are just on fire all the time. If you fold the second she pushes back or makes fun of or whatever, any kind of rejection of your thing, she immediately feels unsafe because now she realizes, wow, I can just get upset and he loses his resolve. But most husbands totally mishandle that because they take it as like a personal attack as opposed to realizing like, no, I need to stand firm on this.
So a lot of people like to call this the shit test. And a lot of times women do not know that we're doing it.
I think it's subconscious most of the time.
It has to be, because until I read the actual term, the shit test, I was like, oh yeah, I do that. I didn't know what that was called.
I forget what it stands for, but it stands for something, right? It's not actually like poop.
No. Just basically like we're poking, we're seeing how strong you are in all aspects, because we need to, in order to feel safe, which is the core need of females to feel safe, we have to know that you're not going to back down to a threat, even if the threat is us. So we will poke you, we will push those hot buttons that we're so good at, and we're going to see what you got. And if you cannot pass this test, it's going to be a problem, because we can't respect you, we can't love you, we don't feel safe, and it's a problem. So she'll keep doing this until she is confident and safe enough to know that that she's safe. And you're right, she should not. Don't take it personal. And because sometimes she'll make it personal. She'll start slinging arrows. She'll start calling you names and things of that nature. And to see, like, am I going to provoke? Is this guy going to be able to remain stoic, not get all like reach my emotional levels? You got to let it roll off of your. I mean, inside you might be dying. You might be like, your heart might be beating.
Oh yeah.
Is she gonna leave me? Because the guys are they're apprehensive of confrontation. You got to get over that. Like you have to get over it. Your wife will not leave you. Okay. Your wife is not going to leave you for remaining stoic and leading and being a man, because ultimately that's what we want. We want a man. We don't want to push over. The
man has to be the lighthouse. The women are like the waves, right? You're swirling and crashing, and you're going to crash into the lighthouse, but it will remain, right? And on top of that, the lighthouse is also directing light to show people where to get to safety, right? So we have to be that in our marriage. We have to be the rock. We have to be the pillar. And the physical emulates the spiritual. Men have to rise to the occasion in the physical sense. For intimacy, you have to do the same thing in the emotional sense. It's by design. Hello, everyone. My name is George Hayworth.
And I'm Monica Almaguer.
We are going to discuss masculine leadership, and we wanted to do this together because in the context of marriage, I think there's a lot of arguing on the internet, there's a lot of misunderstanding. So what we wanted to accomplish with this video is a male's perspective and a female's perspective on what actually makes a successful marriage work and what the man needs to do in terms of leadership. So with that, let me quickly define, at least from my point of view, I think a few fundamental things men need to understand, and then let's just have this back and forth. And our goal here today, for those listening, is to empower you to have a stronger marriage. So if you don't agree with something, keep listening on to see if maybe there's some nuggets you can take, and we're here to help you learn. So with that, I think there's 4 basics that all men need to have. I call it the 4 pillars of authentic manhood, and it's king, warrior, mentor, and lover. And you have to have all these things equally balanced to be a true man. If they are out of alignment, you are either a tyrant or you're a pushover. And so very quickly, men are designed for leadership. You should be leading, especially in your family. The warrior pillar is to be the protector. Men are at their best when they're defending the innocent. The mentor pillar is about, 1, improving yourself, because in order to train others, you have to gain mastery over yourself first. And the final one is the lover pillar, which I think most men gloss over or completely underutilize, and that's things like emotional intelligence, empathy, compassion, and understanding. And when you use that, combined with all the other pillars, you transform into a more complete man, a tender warrior capable of leading your family. And with leadership, there's one final point I want to make. It's the 3 legs of leadership, which is authority, responsibility, and compassion. like a stool. If you take one leg away, the whole thing falls over. I found this to be true not just in family leadership as a husband and as a father, but also even in the military. So with that said, I'll pause. I glossed over a lot of key points there, but I think most men aren't doing a lot of those things, and that's why most women are so frustrated. So Monica, what do you think are some of the things men need to do to actually lead in their marriage?
Yeah, George, I think that your system and how you categorized it is very accurate. And you're right. Like, that was a lot, like, woo, a lot to take in just like a few minutes there. So I kind of try to make it a little bit more basic. And that as women, we just want somebody who is dependable, trustworthy, and proactive. And I think that a lot of guys believe that they are dependable and trustworthy on the big things. But I do see the biggest problem with today's men is that they're not quite proactive enough. So that's where I think it's really, really amazing. And you're absolutely right. Like you have these different categories in which you say that, you can't just be great in one category and not in the others because they're all intertwined. Men don't understand that everything it's mesh, it's mingled. And so if you're doing great as a protector and a provider, but you're not hitting the points in those other areas, that your marriage it's going to be crappy. So, and guys are confused. They're like, I'm going to work. I'm doing my job as a protector and provider. It's more than that.
That's right. Yeah, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding I think a lot of men just don't even understand what the role is anymore.
True.
So one more quick question for you, just from the female perspective. What are you actually wanting in a man? Like what does a good man look like to you? And I'm assuming your husband does a great job of this, but tell us kind of a little bit more of those facets. I kind of gave some terms out there, but I think that'll help guys really understand. And I say this from the lens of, I believe women's number one need is emotional and physical safety. And when that is met, everything else is kind of underneath that umbrella. So I'll pause there and let you respond.
Well, I always say that women just have two core needs. Two primary things. One for safety. Now, you point out physical safety, which is part of it, but there's a lot of other safeties in there. There's financial safety, as you spoke about. Right. There's physical safety. There's emotional safety, and then there's also spiritual safety. And then they also need to be loved. And that's, if you can hit all of those, so even within just safety, you have all these other categories, and to feel loved. If you can nail those are, you're going to be good.
Right. So what are some practical ways, at least from your point of view, that makes you feel safe in those ways? And I think most men struggle to understand the emotional safety aspect, right? Because we're very, she's upset, there must be a problem, how do I fix the problem? And it's not really a problem, it's actually about her emotions. So how do you feel safe and protected emotionally in those types of situations where you had something happen or feel a certain way, and your husband is able to actually be there and lead you through those things? And I'll give my thoughts on this afterwards, but I'd love your perspective first.
Yeah. When I think of emotional safety, I think like, this guy is not going to break my heart. Like, what behaviors are you doing that can ultimately lead to feeling like, are you behaving and conducting yourself as a married man or a man who is in a long-term relationship in a way that she never has to question your loyalty or like what's going on? Like, if she has to question something, you're doing something wrong. So, right. And it might seem like it's the small things. I always say, like, social media is such an easy example, because if you are looking at, I'm probably more chill and lax than most females, but like, if you are looking at females or commenting or hearting them or having these text conversations with another female, there's always going to be that little question. Why do that? Why do that to your relationship? Yeah. and stuff? So, I say that your actions and your words are either going to move your relationship to a place that is better or a place that is worse. And so really, that's all you have to ask yourself. Am I doing things that are going to make her feel more secure or less secure? And usually the answer is pretty simple in regards to that.
Yeah. And so a couple points on just emotional safety a little bit further too. So for me, from my perspective as a man who's had to grow in this a lot, controlling my emotions is almost the most important thing. at least from my view, right? If I lose composure, if my anger takes over and I'm just outbursting, like I'm the most dangerous thing to my family. The likelihood of me losing my composure and hurting my family is higher than almost every other threat, if we're honest. Most of us live pretty comfortable lives in America where we're not really worried about like where the next meal's coming from or, I'm going to get attacked on the street type of thing, right? So most of our own composure as men is setting the conditions for how safe our wife is even going to feel in the first place. And so that's where then, to your point, like social media and everything, men, this is a hard line rule for me. You should not have female friends. Period.
I agree.
Like there is no reason you should have a friend who's a female that is a one-on-one type of friendship. If it's you and your spouse are like meeting other couples and you guys get together and barbecues, okay, they're your friends, sure.
Right.
But there is zero reason for me to be like if we lived in the same town or whatever, we're not meeting alone. It's just not going to happen.
100%.
It's just not. It's a hard and fast rule. You're just opening the door to questions from everyone. It sends a terrible message. And men, this is where leading by example comes into play. Right? Your job is to set the tone. Your reputation, your perception that you give off is how your whole family is going to be judged. So like it or not, that's your responsibility. And so you have to hold yourself to that higher standard. So I'd love for you.
You're 100% on point. The female thing. I'm a hardline black or white type of girl as well. Once again, default, is this good for my marriage or my relationship? No, it's not. So I can always say you can only be loyal to one. And who is that loyalty to? If it's not to your spouse, you might have to revisit, the relationship. Yeah. So do things that are in her best interest, even if it is to, I wouldn't say the detriment of yourself, but true love is sacrificial. So you might be sacrificing a relationship with another female for the benefit of the one person who you vowed loyalty to.
I don't even really think it's a sacrifice. It's just a realignment of priorities. And so, this, to me, for men, I think we're very wired differently than women, right? So I think we view these things very differently. From my experience and training men and coaching men to do these things, if a guy is like struggling with all these like hobbies and everything, and he's gaming too much, and he's drinking too much, and he's watching too much football and all these things, it's because he just has no purpose. He has no real mission that he's on. And so he's just distracted by everything. And I think actually a distracted man is about the least attractive possible thing to a wife, right? She had Prince Charming, now you're married, and now he's just this distracted slob. And so the messaging is, I'm just another kid in the house, right? It creates this really unhealthy dynamic. Flip that around, when men start to grow and actually start taking ownership, you don't even care about all these other distractions you used to have because you have your purpose and mission again. And like I used to waste all kinds of time on video games, watching football, just doing all these stupid things. I don't even care anymore. Like I haven't, like I've got a guitar right here and I've been so busy doing things that are just really important right now. I haven't even played it in like 6 months. And I used to play all the time and I love guitar, but at the same time, it's like I'm building something great right now. I don't have time for little, toys. And I think most men are stuck there where they've convinced themselves that the things are more important than the outcomes, right? So I think that dynamic is a huge piece of it. And, that's why, guys, I actually am harder on you with that. Like, you're not sacrificing crap. You chose to marry this woman. You chose to start a family. Grow up. The buck stops with you. It's your responsibility. And if you don't like hearing that, then you should really take a hard look in the mirror and reevaluate what your priorities are. I bet I could tell you by just looking at your calendar.
Oh, that's a good point. Look at your calendar, what's going on. I do think it's really important for men to have their own thing. You definitely have a mission and such. I do like the musical hobby or things of that nature, but it is so easy for guys they go, I did my job, I went to work, I'm providing, and now I get to come home and check out. So essentially, you're saying that, and what I'm hearing is it's the same thing. You're like, you can't check out. Like, you got to be better. And I love that you are also very growth mindseted and wanting to be your best, because ultimately either partner can enhance the relationship, but it really does come down a lot of it to the guys. There's very few females who will sit and look at themselves and be like, I need to level up. I need to do better, because when you do better as a wife, then your husband's going to be like, oh crap, man, I can't be left behind. He's going to level up too. But there's very few females that will do that. You're absolutely right. The guy sets the tone. If he wants things to look a certain way in his house, They look exactly the way that he has created it.
Yes. Yeah. So I say that all the time. Men, the status of your relationship, the status of your marriage is exactly what you have earned. So if it's great, that means you've done the work to foster that. If it's terrible, look in the mirror, bro. So we're going to generalize here for a minute. And so I can just already see the exceptioneers coming out from the internet. But in general, okay, men are the ones who initiate and women follow. Women are responsive creatures. And I don't say that disparagingly. I want to make this very clear. That is women's superpower. It is a feature, not a flaw. You are highly attuned to the emotional, the spiritual, and when a man is smart enough to actually connect with his wife on those levels, it enhances his ability to lead that much further. So I don't say this to put women down. I want to be very clear about that. However, there are still defined roles that work on purpose because it's how we're designed. Sure. Men are supposed to initiate, cover the ground, set the tone, like you said, and then women respond to that. And I would love for you to kind of dive into that because, you know, I get plenty of naysayers and, oh, you misogynist and blah, blah, blah. But I'd love the feminine perspective to that. When a husband is truly leading, again, with the 4 pillars of manhood, the 3 legs of leadership, you're balancing all these things together. You're not a tyrant. How different is your life as a wife and mother having a husband who leads in that way versus the slob playing video games and drinking beer and checking out?
I think it's a myth that some women are too strong and too independent to follow a man. I am one of the most strong, independent females I know. Like, I'm like, nobody, no man's going to tell me what to do. But
like a boss babe type
yeah,
of
yeah.
mindset.
Like, yeah. I'm a boss babe. I run, 2 businesses. I have a lot going on. Like, I am the ultimate boss babe, but I think boss babe has a negative connotation, so I try not to identify with that. But all females will come under the leadership of a strong enough man. And when I say strong, it doesn't mean dictatorship or anything of that nature. It's just that females that are super strong and independent need that even higher guy, the guy who even has more of his crap together, because we have to have something stronger than us. And if we don't, we can't respect the guy. And if we can't respect the guy, then we can't love him. So ultimately, you have to be stronger than your female in leadership. And there's definitely a bell curve or, a graph on how strong one has to be. It doesn't mean you have to be a jerk about it, but you do have to be very confident with the direction in which you are leading your family, or else you will lose the respect of your wife, and that will kill your marriage.
Yeah. If she doesn't respect you, she's not going to bed with you, bro. That's how it works.
I mean, yeah. And it leads to a horrendous cascade of events that leads to the destruction and divorce.
Right. Yeah. I do want to come back to disrespect because you've got a great scenario that's a great litmus test for men, right? But before we get there, this is why I preach so heavily on a man building himself first, right? Leaning into the 4 pillars, developing yourself on a personal level, because you have to grow individually to be able to lead others, right? That's true not just for marriage, that's across the board. We just seem to not accept it in marriage. But with that, you build gravity, right? You build mass behind what you're doing, and your wife naturally starts to fall more in line with it because she sees that you are serious about what you're doing. I think it's the distraction thing again, right? If my messaging to my wife is that I'm constantly distracted, I'm incapable of making any decisions, she doesn't trust anything then, because now she has to be the leader. She has to do half my job on top of all the other things that she's responsible for. And I basically just pushed it off on her, right? And so guys, if you're doing it unintentionally, you're still doing it. Make no mistake. There are consequences to everything you do or fail to do. And that growth, that personal journey first, a lot of times removes a lot of the problems she has with you off the table very quickly because she just starts to see, oh, he's clearly becoming a better guy. I'll give him some grace now. And that's why, men, I challenge you first. You're the initiator. You set the tone. Grow yourself and your leadership abilities first, and it's naturally going to start setting conditions for your marriage to heal and start accelerating to a better position. Let's get to the respect piece. So you have a great test about this kind of comes to correction, really. You say that word, a husband corrects his wife. I'm sure most people lose their minds today. But men, that's actually your responsibility. And let's talk about why. So Monica, you've got that test about like if you're in a social setting and she says something, right? I'd love for you to kind of tee that one up because I actually learned something from you on this.
Well, I know we were previously discussing, and I think the number one mistake that men make in their relationship is that they do not, I say the word check their wives. So, and you say correct. But what I'm saying is as far as how she is treating you. And what women do not typically understand is that the ultimate worst level of disrespect for men is to correct them, or not correct them, but disrespect them in public. Because it's one thing to do that in the privacy of your own home, but when you're doing it in a public setting, that is the highest level of disrespect, and disrespect is the number one core need of men. And so I am very much like, you need to correct your wife, not only correct her, but because you're teaching her how to treat you, and setting those boundaries, which is going to make her respect you. Now, in the moment, she's not going to like it. In the moment, you got to be prepared for the backlash. But it doesn't last long, because when she knows she can't get away with disrespect, and that is going to be called out, and it's going to be checked, and it's going to be corrected every time, she just stops doing it. She's like, oh, this is how we're operating now. And so she will correct herself. So the specific situation where we had discussed was, well, let's say you guys are out at a party and she starts talking negatively or smack about you in front of other people. What do? You're in this public setting, and your notion was like, oh, I might table that. Was that correct? I might table that till we get home.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to say anything like in front of other people. And I think my gut reaction was like, probably in the car ride home type of thing. I'm like, hey, this is unacceptable, blah, 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 lay it out. And you had some pushback on that. So, and I think this is massively valuable to men, because, I consider myself to be a pretty strong man in terms of his gravity with his wife and ability to kind of course correct things. And this was still a little bit eye-opening for me. So I'd love you to kind of hit that perspective here.
Yeah, so what I think is a more effective technique is that you always want to correct or check or address the issue as close as possible to when it happens. So in this case, I would let the conversation wrap up for a minute and pull her aside in another room or something at the party, and I would actually call her aside in private, in a bedroom, bathroom, whatever, and be like, hey, what you did there was not acceptable. I expect you not to do that again. And the time frame as close as possible. She's not going to throw a fit. She's in public. She'll privately stew about it, and maybe, not talk to you for the rest of the party, but maybe that's good. It gives her some time to reflect, kind of, digest it, to where when you go home, she might still give you a little bit of that blowback. But I really do think as soon as possible in the privacy, because you never want to disrespect her either, by saying something in front of other people. And it's really important to do that as soon as possible.
Yeah. And the reason you had told me it's important to do it as soon as possible is, one, it will be less intense, actually, because it's like it's not built up as much. It's just a quick little like, hey, this isn't okay because of this, this, and this. And then two, it's also because you kind of talked about like the longer you let it go on, she'll either forget about it or want to fight about it more, or kind of distract.
Or deny she even did it, or be like, "What are you talking about? Like,
what are you talking about?
I never said that."
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Now you're starting a whole second argument about what was said and what wasn't said.
Yeah. So this comes back to what I call being a man of standards, right? And standards isn't necessarily like you're trying to force people to be a certain way. It's a personal code that you live by, and this is also, like, I've learned this through clinical therapy, is people treat you the way you let them. So your wife is no different, right? And you have to stand up for yourself in a sense. And again, we're not going to war with her. This isn't like we're going to have it out now. It's just a subtle little thing like, hey, babe, maybe you didn't mean it, but the way you spoke right there was very disrespectful. Right. I would appreciate it if you would not do that anymore moving forward, right? So we're not going to get all amped up about it. Again, we're going to be stoic. We're going to be in control of our emotions, and we're giving a correction. Now, if she doubles down to your point about like, no, I did not, and wants to get all emotional. Like, okay, well, I said my piece. We're in public. We can talk about this later and move on, right? So
Right.
do you think that that would actually be the best kind of way to handle that type of thing?
Oh yeah, that was perfect. And,
Okay.
let her know I'm willing to talk about this at the right place and time, which now is not the right
Right.
place or time. I wanted to let you know right now. We'll definitely talk about it more. So
So,
because you
yeah,
have to give her the opportunity to feel heard, or
that's right.
I
That's
never
right.
I never like the having somebody having the unilateral decision when a topic is closed. I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, I agree. That's not healthy either. There should always be some level of consensus because we are a team. It's husband and wife together versus the world, not versus each other. And so the
Yeah.
sooner we can get back to that is the way we need to get to. So, men, that's part of the initiation there, right? It's not just sexual initiation; it's emotional. If there is a break between you because of some argument or whatever, it's your job to kind of make the first steps like, hey, I'm ready to have this conversation and work towards reconciliation if you are too. No, I'm still pissed off about it, blah, blah. Okay, well, we'll try again later. But it's your job to kind of keep probing to bring things back, right? Because you're responsible ultimately for the health of your home. It's not always fair, but that's leadership, baby. Sometimes it's not doesn't feel good to be the king, Sometimes heavy is the head that wears the crown. So,
I like that.
you alluded to something that I really want to get into as well, especially from a female's perspective, because I talk about it a lot, but it's one thing for me to say it as a man, it's another to hear it from a woman, and it comes back to that notion of like correcting. Women, I think often will, because you are highly attuned emotionally, it's essentially a feminine test where you're trying to see, is this man's resolve stronger than my emotion? And so I really want to go into this piece here because I think most men misunderstand this and misunderstand how vitally important this dynamic is for you to create a healthy, vibrant marriage where you guys are just on fire all the time. And it comes from the notion that if you fold the second she pushes back or makes fun of or whatever, any kind of rejection of your thing, she immediately feels unsafe because now she realizes, wow, I can just get upset and he loses his resolve. So I want to make that clear that like feminine testing is not like a manipulative thing. It's how you guys feel the world. You do it with everything.
Right.
It's not just to your husband. But most husbands totally mishandle that because they take it as like a personal attack as opposed to realizing like, no, I need to stand firm on this. And like you said, she may get upset in the short term, but it's actually going to make her want me more or want to follow me more, a day from now. So
Correct.
Could you talk about that a little bit, just how that dynamic plays out, especially when like a man handles that correctly, how much different it feels for you on the response?
Yeah, so a lot of people like to call this the shit test. And a lot of times women do not know that we're doing it.
I think it's subconscious most of the time.
It has to be because until I read the actual term, the shit test, I was like, oh yeah, I do that. I didn't know what that was called.
I forget what it stands for, but it stands for something, right? It's not actually like poop.
No. Just basically like we're poking, we're seeing how strong you are in all aspects because we need to, in order to feel safe, which is the core need of females to feel safe, we have to know that you're not going to back down to a threat, even if the threat is us. So we will poke you. We will push those hot buttons that we're so good at, and we're going to see what you got. And if you cannot pass this test, it's going to be a problem because we can't respect you. We can't love you. We don't feel safe, and it's a problem. So she'll keep doing this until she is confident and safe enough to know that that she's safe. And you're right. She should not. Don't take it personal. And because sometimes she'll make it personal. She'll start slinging arrows. She'll start calling you names and things of that nature. And to see, like, am I going to provoke? Is this guy going to be able to remain stoic, not get all, like, reach my emotional levels? You got to let it roll off of your, inside you might be dying. You might be like, your heart might be beating.
Oh, yeah.
Is she going to leave me? Because the guys are they're apprehensive of confrontation. You got to get over that. Like you have to get over it. Your wife will not leave you. Okay. Your wife is not going to leave you for remaining stoic and leading and being a man, because ultimately that's what we want. We want a man. We don't want to push over.
Yeah. I kind of equate it to like the man has to be the lighthouse, right?
Yeah.
And the women are like the waves, right? You're swirling and crashing, and you're going to crash into the lighthouse, but it will remain, right? And on top of that, the lighthouse is also directing light to show people where to get to safety, right? So we have to be that in our marriage. We have to be the rock. We have to be the pillar. And, the physical emulates the spiritual. Men have to rise to the occasion in the physical sense. For intimacy, you have to do the same thing in the emotional sense. It's by design. And when you understand that, you can separate yourself from how it feels to like, oh, I get what's going on now, and actually flank it. So I'd like to quickly go through just a few things men can do consistently to actually like recognize what's going on and how to kind of start, course correcting the state of their marriage, because I used to struggle with this immensely. Okay, so I'm saying this as a guy who used to get it wrong. I've been married for 10 and a half years, and maybe 9 of them I did not know how to do this. All right, so you can change it pretty quick, and the results are worth it. So number one, like I said, you have to grow yourself. You need to immediately start building yourself up as a man in all forms of leadership, which means that you're going to have to connect with other men who are better than you to teach you. It's just how it works, guys. You do it with sports, you do it with lifting weights, you do it with your business. Time to do it with your marriage, okay? The next thing is practicing emotional regulation. This is a skill that every man has to master. It is not a feminine thing. It is a human being thing. Women respond differently than men, but we have emotions too. And when you are stoic, that doesn't mean you push them down and ignore them. It means you recognize what's happening, you grab that emotion, you take control of it, and you respond. You don't react, all right? Because if you're reacting, your emotions are in control of you. You aren't in control of you. And that's a huge step. And then the final thing, to your point, is it's going to feel unfair. Well, life's not fair. And again, we're generalizing. There are manipulative women, no question. There are bad women, there are bad men. All right, we've got that out of the way. In the ideal sense, the perfect woman is still going to do feminine testing because it's how she feels safe. It's how she gets confirmation that the world is not out to get her and that her husband has her back and covers her. So lose this feeling of entitlement and lean into ownership and understand that I can actually affect the outcome. However she's feeling, I actually get to choose as the man how this is going to go based off of how I act. Again, men are the initiators and women respond. So she may be charged and she's all amped up and she's coming at you with something, but if you completely navigate around it, she'll follow. So I want you to remember that. Lose the victim mindset and embrace ownership. That's point number 3. So again, I rattled off a lot there, Monica. I'd love for you to kind of respond to some of those points too. And if I missed anything, what do you think men need to do as well?
Well, one point, and I do think this comes into it, is that your word as a man has to be solid. Your number one job is to create a level of trust and a level of standard for yourself that she would never even have on you. Like, that's my goal as a wife, is to have a standard as a wife higher than his standard that he has for me. And you guys should do the same. You should have a standard for yourself as a husband that is far greater than your wife would ever have of you. And so if you're always striving to get to that level, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. But I think, as far as like a practical thing is, one example that I'm kind of like, guys, this is killing your level of trust is if you commit to your wife that you're going to do something, or I always say wife, whether it's relationship or whatever the deal is, whatever you say you do, you have to do. And if that means that you told your wife you're going to clean the bathrooms on Saturday, you better have your butt in there cleaning the bath on Saturday. Because if you don't, she's like, this guy's lying. He can't be trusted. He's lazy. And so it's ultimate accountability. If you tell your wife you're going to do something, even in the smallest of small tasks, if you don't do it, you better come to her and be like, I am so sorry. I dropped the ball. This is when I'm going to do it. And just like at work, you don't get assigned a task or say, I'm going to take a task on. And then all of a sudden you don't do it. And then don't report back and be like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, hey, I have accountability. You messed up. What you're going to do to fix it. She has to know, like, if you don't do it, her brain, female brains, they don't shut off. So it's all connected. It doesn't. All connected. I always say it's like 100 computer tabs or more, right? So you guys can work on like one computer tab at a time. We don't do that. Our tabs never close. Okay, so allow her to close that tab. Okay, so if you do what you're saying, she can close it, and that is that takes such a weight off of our shoulders, and that translates into a happier wife, and therefore everyone gets along. But just really in the small things, particularly at home, be a man of your word.
Yeah, and that's a big thing I preach. It's lead by example, right? Be a man of your word, lead by example. You do what you say, you mean what you say, and you follow through. That goes for like disciplining the kids too. Don't you ever threaten something that you're not actually going to follow through on.
100%.
If you say, I'm going to take the thing away for a week, you better freaking do it. Like if you fold after 3 days, again, your kids now don't respect you in the same way that you've lost respect for your wife. And you made a great point too. It's in the little things on the consistent basis, right? So I think we fall into this trap of, I'm going to do one real big, take her out on this big romantic date or whatever, and everything's going to be fine again. It's like she almost doesn't care about that. It's the consistent little things over and over and over. And when those are dialed in, then your big gestures actually matter, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're trying to do some big, mighty gesture to like win her back or whatever, it falls flat because the story you're telling all the time is, I'm not actually the man of the house, right? I'm not actually leading you. I'm not actually a leader. And that is super destructive. And so a great example that I like to highlight with this one, and I'd love for you to kind of kick this one around too, is that shopping cart example, right? I call it like the shopping cart test, where the scenario is husband and wife are going to the supermarket together. You know you're there to get a lot of groceries, right? And most men will do this thing where we walk in and go, hey, honey, should I get a cart? Yes, dummy, you're there to get groceries. Grab the cart. So it's a little bit of a funny example because it sticks. You could replace this scenario with any menial, mundane thing, but men are constantly deferring to their wives on little meaningless things like a shopping cart instead of just taking action. And you talked about this at the very beginning. Be proactive, make decisions. And so I think men have been convinced that if they are just taking action, they're somehow selfish, or their wives are going to get upset because, you're being, arrogant or a tyrant or something like that. And it's like, to your point of having this massive list of things or all these tabs open, by you just doing what should be done anyway without even asking her, you're just closing those off and lowering the amount of things that she's thinking about. So I'd love for you to kind of respond to that example, because I think this is a critical piece that men don't realize how often they are actually deferring to their wife. And the final point I'll make is, you are telling your wife, I'm a little boy, help me, mommy. And that is the most destructive dynamic you can create in your marriage, because it will be a very dead bedroom very fast.
No, yeah, that's true. I mean, if you think about back when you were dating, you didn't call and say, where do you want to go? What do you like? You just made the plan.
Exactly.
She will let you know if she doesn't like it. But
that's
your
right.
goal as a husband, one of the kindest, most loving things you can do is to bear that emotional burden and to close those tabs. And so, yes, don't stop asking questions and just start doing some things. She'll let you know. You could be instead, and they do this because you guys think you're being loving. You're like, where do you want to go for dinner? Because you want her to be happy, right? Most of the time, these questions come about, or you don't plan date nights because you want to make sure, what do you want to eat? No, stop asking questions. I actually did a podcast about how to speak more femininely to as a woman. Because I speak kind of more blunt and more masculine a lot of the times. And one of the things I said was to take statements and turn them into questions, because that is perceived as more feminine and more caring. So if you reverse that, start making more statements. If you want to be perceived as more masculine and more decisive, we don't want to decide. I know you guys, my husband always says he has so many cases to close and all these things, and he wants to come home, relax, and not making more decisions. Sorry, that's not how it works. You don't get to drop the ball as a man just because you're tired or you've had a rough day. But that's what I believe most guys do. Start making more decisions and let her, she'll tell you if she has something else in mind. But she will appreciate and love that you have made those decisions.
Yeah, and like a step 2 of that dynamic that we're speaking to is you have to cast your vote, men. So you need to say things like, hey, honey, I'd like you to cook this for dinner, or I'd like you to go do this thing, or I'd like you to do that thing. You have to state what you want. Because she wants to make you happy. I mean, in a relatively healthy marriage, each other wants to make each other happy, right? It's not this like man versus woman thing. Like I think the world wants you to believe that, and it's just not true. So you have to speak up for yourself, because if you're just sitting there stewing and you never even cast your vote, well, how on earth is she going to know?
Right.
She can't read your mind, bro. So you got to say things like that. Hey, honey, if she comes to you, hey, honey, I want to go to this thing on Saturday. Yeah, I really don't want to do that. I would much rather stay home, get the lawn mowed, and have a day to decompress. It's been a busy week. Oh, okay. Well, honey, is it that important to you? No, not really. Are you sure? Yep, it's okay. All right, well, good. I'm glad we had the talk. Thanks. Like that dynamic needs to exist. If you're just constantly doing whatever she wants, again, now she subconsciously knows, crap, I'm in charge, not him. He's just doing whatever I say. He's just another boy in the house. He's not actually my husband.
Right.
And again, I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill, but I think guys listening, count yourself this week. How many times do you do essentially the shopping cart situation where you're deferring on a tiny little thing that you could just do? And if that number is like 50 to 100 or more, you need to really wake up and realize that you need to start actually just making little decisions. And I say this with a lot of grace and empathy too, because I'm a military guy. I've been a company commander. I've led soldiers in deployments and everything. And I caught myself doing this, and I was like, "What is wrong with me?" I've been this huge, militaristic leader, and I defer to my 5-foot, 100-pound wife. What's going on? So, if you're in that position, it's okay. You can change pretty quickly. Don't beat yourself up about it, but you need to have that light bulb go off to realize how to change it.
Yeah, absolutely, George. I mean, you're on point. It's never too late. I started making these changes in my marriage at 45 and 48 now. And I like to think that we're pretty smart people, right?
Yeah,
but it takes
right.
sometimes you're just like, oh my gosh, how was I so stupid? And so if you're like in our age range or even older and you haven't taken that initiative to correct things, it's not too late. You definitely can make those moves, and things will change really fast. It doesn't take long.
Yeah, it really does. In general, unless you have like some massive traumatic thing that's happened in your marriage, you can cover a lot of ground pretty quickly. But even if there is a very painful thing, men, if you start doing these actions that we've been talking about, you will make the healing process be much more rapid. Like, so in my own personal journey, which it's all over the internet, you can go find it. But, it was basically a decade of turmoil. Most of that was my fault. It's because I failed to actually lead myself through difficult situations, let alone my wife. And if I would have known some of these things or had guys around me to actually teach me these things better and hold me accountable to them, I think my timeline would have been massively compressed to like maybe a one rough year. Okay. So with that lens in mind, like, don't give up wherever you are. Start making incremental progress. Reach out to other guys who are interested in the same things. And you will transform the status of your marriage pretty quickly. And one more little anecdote on that. I'm working with a bunch of one-on-one clients right now. Some of them only as little as 4 weeks, and they're already like, wow, our marriage is way different already. So just some context there. It's not a hopeless endeavor. It is totally worth the effort to fight for your marriage. All right, we talked a lot about the emotional sense. Let's get into the physical sense a little bit, because I know this is something you're pretty hard line on, Monica, is that men should be fit, period. All right. So I would love actually for you to tee this one off, because I think I've beat this horse into the ground already plenty in my content, but I think your perspective would be very helpful to the guys out there.
Okay. So I believe that I'm trying to word this in a way. When you are a man who is not okay, I'm blunt. So I hope you're all your
do it. Poke him in the chest.
Women,
listen up, guys. This is going to sting.
Okay, this might sting. No woman's ever said those six-pack abs look awful. So, but it's not just about the physicality of the a man is like, being fit is so much more for a woman, because if you are not a fit man, you do not have the ability to keep her safe. You do not have the ability to keep her safe financially. You can have a heart attack. You could be in the hospital. You can be passed on promotions that you otherwise might have gotten. You can't physically protect her. You can't run. You can't carry her. You can't have the cardio capacity. So that's threatened as well. You cannot, it speaks to a level of grit, being strong as a man, which makes us feel emotionally safe. Being like, if you can't even resist a fork or, a cake or whatever, there's no level of self-control there. So if he can't control himself with food, how can he control himself with women or other temptations, right? Like with women, it's all together. So you might be like, well, I'm fine, I can't say no to cheesecake, but I can say no to this woman. I don't think that really correlates in a woman's mind. And so when you have a man who's not physically fit, you are saying, you can say the words, I love you, I love you, I love you. Your body is saying something totally different.
Right. Well, and I'll take it a step further for the men themselves. You're saying, I don't love myself. You're outwardly telling the world, I don't care about myself enough to exercise and monitor what I eat. And so from the role of like a leader, right? And if you're a married man, guess what? You are a leader. You may not lead anywhere else in life, but you have one place to lead, and you volunteered for it. So it's your responsibility. Is you're telling them, I have no discipline. I don't have enough basic discipline to keep myself at a basic level of health. And guys, today the bar is set so low to be relatively physically fit. It's really not that challenging. But that outward messaging makes everyone lose respect for you, not just your wife. But internally, I think you underestimate how much this is destroying your own mentality. It is eating you up from the inside out. It is destroying how much you love and respect yourself. And if you are in that broken state, there is no way you can lead anyone through anything because you're already on empty, right? So again, it's not everything, but it is certainly a major starting point for men. So if you've been like stuck and in a rut or whatever, go hit the gym. Start eating better. Everything else starts to fall in line after that. It's like the easiest, most simple, basic discipline men can start implementing in their life, and it gives very quick feedback, and it starts stacking wins for you, and you build momentum. But I kind of cut you off. Please continue, because I know you got a lot more to say.
No, you're absolutely, because a woman knows, like, an overweight man, and I'm not talking 10 or 20 pounds. I'm talking like obesity.
Well, even an underweight man.
Or even underweight. Like, that's no good either. Like, how are you supposed to protect a woman like that? But when you're not physically adapt, it's definitely, she can't look at you. She knows, like, you don't even respect yourself. You're asking me to respect you. You don't respect yourself. You're not a man who can lead. It's completely incongruent to what you say you want. And when there's those discrepancies between you saying, this is what I think how you should be treating me as a wife, but you don't even have enough respect for yourself, you can't have it both ways. It's a hypocrisy.
Right. What about the kind of argument like, well, no, I actually like the dad bod. Women will say that all the time. This is my take, and I'd love your response on it. I believe that every woman who says that is a liar, because really, she's just trying to make it okay for her to be out of shape herself and doesn't want her husband to feel bad, right? It's creating less pressure on her to have to change anything for herself, right? I have never met, to your point earlier, I don't know any woman who's like, no, I don't like the six-pack abs. And I don't know any man who says, no, I don't like having bigger biceps. So
there is that leniency to me, like 10, 20 pounds. I remember we were on this cruise.
Right.
And
we're not
talking, but overall, like, we also know that sometimes to be super lean and to be super fit, we're on this cruise and we're seeing these divers and they're diving from like way up high, and this guy had it was an amazing body, and my husband asked me, he's like, well, would you be more attracted to me if I had that body? And I was like, you know what, I might be maybe 10% more attracted to you, but the work that would be required to get that, right, I don't think it's a good trade-off. So so there's that. Being the ultimate pinnacle of, the top 1% of guys, I don't think that's necessary, but yeah, there's going to be zero downside to getting your fitness right. And it more so, what does it do for you as a man, the confidence? And it just rolls over into every aspect of life. It's so important for not only yourself, but for your marriage and for your wife.
Okay, but for the overweight guys who have a little bit of a dad bod and their wife says, oh, I actually like his dad bod, what is that real?
Then she'll love his not dad bod. If she likes
all right, there we go.
Yeah, so the attraction level will increase how much incrementally. That just depends on your wife. But I always say, look back at when you were married, and are you at least as good as that, or are you better?
Right.
Like, let that be your baseline, because you don't want a bait and switch, essentially.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. No one wants that, getting
Right.
catfished or whatever. Right?
Yeah, catfish on the wedding day.
Yeah, you make a very valid point, right? Okay, and I want this to be very clear to all the men too. Like, I'm not expecting every man out there to be as fit as me or more, right?
Right.
And not like I'm the standard or whatever, but it's not about being the most fit human, right? Because, like, to your point, in order to do that, that has to become your full-time job. Okay, that's not realistic for basically 99% of us. Okay, for the rest of us, are you moving your body to stay healthy, to lose a little bit of weight, to resist diseases, colds and flus, because you're actually exercising? And are you eating well enough to preserve yourself long term and to give you energy? That's the standard that I'm talking about, right? If you are a competitive athlete, obviously you need to train more. If you're a bodybuilder, you better train like it. If you're the average guy trying to just be fit and look good naked, guess what? 4 times a week and a very consistent diet is probably plenty. And if that's your starting point, you'll get discipline building, you'll get wins, and you can grow from that point. But the excuse of, I think guys try to throw out a lot of excuses like, well, we're more evolved now. Women don't really care about your physical that much. It's more about these other things I provide, and I do those things. It's a sham, because deep down,
women do care,
that you are lying to yourself and you're lying to the world. And it probably doesn't feel good. So if that hurt your feelings a little bit, good. I want to come help you. Come here. We'll hug it out for a minute, and then we'll get you fit, right? But guys, it's very important. Look at our country. I think it's 80% of Americans are some form of overweight or obese or morbidly obese. 80%. So in order to be in the top 20%, you just have to not be fat. You don't even have to be strong. Like, think about how insane that is. The bar is so low.
The bar is so low.
You need to start leading.
It really is.
Set it, model it for your kids too.
Go to any T-ball game on a Saturday and you'll see how low the bar is. I thought that actually happened. All these guys, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're all just. This was an actual discussion I had with my husband. I'm like, look at all those guys. Like, there's like 1 out of 10 that are even normal. They all have they all look 6 months pregnant. It's bad. It's sad more than anything.
Yeah, man, that is not the standard. All right. So again, if you're not there, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad for you. I want to help you win, but it's on you. It's your personal responsibility to start taking action on that. And it's not about perfection. It's not about being the best. It's about making intentional action toward it. And again, your wife is going to notice that, and she may challenge it. Back to the feminine testing. Oh, what? So you're just going to get all jacked now? Is that what you're doing now? Well, yeah, babe, I realize that it's really unhealthy that I'm living the way I am, so I'm going to change it. And then do it. And then watch what happens. Watch how she will respond to you differently moving forward, because
hey, George, though, I have a quick, what happens when you have a man who says, but my wife needs to lose weight too? Do you have guys that say that?
Yeah, so I think that's a great point too. With this one, obviously, father time is not nice to anyone. So obviously there are going to be things, men, that change our wives, and women age a lot differently than we do. My take on this is, if she's making an active, following your leadership, you're fit yourself. Again, you can't be a hypocrite here. You have to be more fit than her. But if you are leading in that way, encouraging her, helping her, and she's actually taking real honest steps to live healthily, in a healthy way, then that is good. If she is in open denial about it, or, again, this is a type of behavior we need to correct. You would do it with your children, and if she's really this led astray, if you really love her, you will fight for her to help her come back to, like, honey, look, this is causing health problems now. I'd like you to live longer. Can we please have this discussion? Go find a fitness coach. Go find someone who can be a third party to help that process. But for you to sit back and just be like, well, I can't control her. Okay, but you're still, again, responsible for everything your family does or fails to do. And right now, you have a member of your family who's unhealthy. So what are you going to do about it, men? I'd love your thoughts on that one. How to handle that one.
Well, would you agree? I guess my question to you would be, I don't believe that an overweight woman is a necessarily threat to the relationship, because it does not affect men's core needs of respect, sex, and food. But I mean, to your point of it's just physically a bad situation, and you as a man should give your input on it and be like, "This is what I'm doing. I'd love for you to join. I'd love for you to get fit with me." But you're gonna have these women and be like, "No, you should just love me for, even if I gained 100 pounds." I don't believe that's fair. I don't believe that's fair, but I give a lot more grace to an overweight woman in a relationship because I don't view that as an immediate threat to the marriage itself.
I can understand that from a threat point of view. But let's play flip the genders real quick. So by that logic, well, you don't really need that. Okay, then as men, she doesn't really need me to do this or that, right? So as soon as we flip the genders, this argument falls on its face, right? And so men, this is again where I encourage you to actually have standards and expectations and value yourself enough to state your case. We're not going to hate our wives. We're not going to beat them down or berate them because they're overweight or whatever or struggling with a health issue. We're going to come around them and support them and help them. But it's still going to be like, hey, we're going to work towards this point, right? Because you're not happy. I'm not happy. We both want to get to this point. So it's teamwork. Again, that's actual leadership, is getting down in the hole with her, right? It's empathy. It's compassion. But you're also not going to just turn a blind eye to it. And you apply that to her health, to finances, to any situation. This is the way we need to go about it. So I think this is just a very painful issue for a lot of people because it's, one, very pervasive. 80% of Americans are overweight. And I think for women, really struggle with identity because it's everywhere, right? We live in this very sexualized world and, women in bikinis on every commercial and all that kind of stuff. And that's not real either, right? And most husbands, to your point, are willing to give a lot of grace when it comes to her body as long as the relationship is strong.
Right.
But I think when you're in that strong point already, that's like, okay, we're both going to keep leveling up. We're both going to keep elevating this relationship to the highest levels. And quite frankly, it's not even about you at that point. It's about your children and their children. What type of example are we going to set for them? We're going to hit our 60s and just totally let ourselves go, or are we going to stay active and fit and healthy to model good habits? So, again, I'm sure I'm going to ruffle some feathers with what I just said, but I don't think there's anything wrong with a healthy man who works very hard to have a very strong marriage, having a little bit of expectations about no, honey, I'd like you to lose a few pounds this year.
I totally back you up on that, George, because not, at least if you lay out your expectation, I have a whole video on expectations. If you lay out your expectations, and I would say this on the women's side as well.
Might be the wrong word. What you want.
Yeah. Your expectation. Well, we all come to a relationship with expectations in every aspect.
Sure.
Or your desires, if you want to put it that way. I desire us to be healthy. I desire us to do this. This is something that's important to me. It's important to you. I want you around when we get older. I want us to age gracefully and in retirement, painting the picture of it. But I'm going to tell you, no matter how kind and gentle and you lay this out, she will get offended. And so prepare for that.
Empathy.
Yes. So no matter how you bring this, she's ultimately going to have to want and choose that for herself.
Correct.
But ultimately, I am big about laying out expectations and desires, and then that way they can at least aim for it if they so choose to.
So this raises a great point. Let's close with this as kind of final point for this one. Men, when you are actually leading correctly, you're doing all of the things we've talked about in this episode so far. You're leading on the 3 legs of leadership. You're embodying the 4 pillars of authentic masculinity. You are loving your wife with empathy and compassion. She should feel your disappointment on things when she steps out of line. And again, it's not to crush her. It's you're standing firm. She's bounced off of you, and you're going to say, yeah, that's disappointing, basically, is what you're going to do. And this is one of those arenas where it's about your wants and expectations, not because we're trying to control anything, but it's just objectively better for everyone. However, you can't control her. You can't make her do anything, to your point. But she should feel that it's a little bit disappointing to you. You still love her. You're still going to give her lots of grace and all those things. But if she's just in open rebellion to what you want, then there should be some disappointment there. And I know, again, I'm going to make all the people get real mad at me on that one. The pitchforks are coming out. But that is actually what real leaders do. Because the alternative to that then is absolute tyranny with punishment and, harsh corrections and yelling and fighting. So that's the tactic men need to lean into. I'd love for you to just respond to that one, and that might be a good place to close this one.
Yeah, if my husband came to me and told me he was disappointed, I would be so hurt. And that's the whole point, was that it's effective. And as opposed
Yeah.
to, yes, that would be, in my mind, as a female, highly effective. Because what you're saying is, I know what you're capable of. You didn't reach that.
That's
And
right.
yeah, that it's actually a compliment, because you have said,
Yes.
I know you're capable of doing this thing. You didn't do it. I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
And you made
And
that is an example of like kind of checking a woman, but it's in a way that's so kind and loving. And in a way that's complimentary, almost, like I said, because it's saying to her that she's capable. Yeah. So
right.
I think it's highly effective. And I think that's a good point.
Yeah. And so I just want to be very clear. This isn't like a constant card we play, because that's manipulation, right? If you're doing that, now you're just manipulating.
Right.
But if it's any situation, right? It's not just the weight situation. It's the speaking out, disrespectful speech in public or whatever. Hey, that's really disappointing behavior. I'd really like it if you didn't do that anymore. It's that weight of, oh, my husband's displeased now, and a natural healthy person wants to not live in that state, right?
Right.
So we're going to do it on matters that actually deserve it. It's not every little thing. There still needs to be lots of grace, right? We both want grace. I don't want to have my head bit off every time I drop the ball on something, right? If I'm making my best efforts, my wife gives me grace when I'm not perfect, because I'm just a guy too. I'm not a perfect human being. And it goes both ways. So when you foster that, I want to make that very clear. This ability to say that disappoints you, or, hey, honey, you've gained 10 pounds, let's work on that. That's like level 100, okay? If you're stuck at level 1, you don't get to have that conversation yet. You have not earned the leadership capital, the presence to have such conversations.
Right.
But as you grow and you really start leading your family, you actually get to play bigger hands in terms of course correcting everyone back to better situations. And again, that's the final goal of a real leader. It's not to glorify yourself, it's to help everyone reach their fullest potential. And so that's one thing we can do for our wives, and we should do it for them. So any closing thoughts on that one?
Now, I think that was actually, this last point was very, very good. And that, men might be like, oh, this is very overwhelming. Well, you don't start at this level.
No.
Like you start,
Yes.
you start going and working out. Like you work on the things, and then you layer on as you go. So I hope that the guys or the ladies watching this will know that you're going to start and layer on top of those. You're building one skill at a time. And so don't get overwhelmed with the whole thing of, I got to do this, and this. No, you don't.
Right.
You're going to start with one thing. And once you have that down, then you add something else and keep on stacking those skills and that goodwill that you've earned. And frankly, the more you do lead, the less these discussions need to be had. So it's the new operating norm of the home.
That's right. Yeah, you set conditions for success for everyone, and it just gets easier. So I love to say that this is an exponential situation, right? When you start to stack wins early and both of you start living better and healthier and your marriage is stronger, the growth happens very fast from that point, because now it's like the soil is turned and it's fertile and the seeds are planted and they get watered really well and they grow really fast. It's when we're trying to do these hard things without doing any of the prep work, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I say all that to say that I want you to see the art of the possible, men. I want you to see and believe that you can get to a better place. Every marriage can transform themselves if they're willing to do the work. We just got to start with some of the basics and grow from there. Monica, let's close. Where can people follow you? Where can they engage with you? What's the best place?
Well, I do have my own podcast called the Marriage, Money, and Mindset Podcast, where I teach men and women all about how to have better marriages. And that's why George and I are so aligned. We have very similar missions. And then you also can check out the other coming and goings on monicaalmaguer.com.
All righty. And I am on X at Elite Sentinel X. And then, of course, the Present Fathers Podcast. So, Monica, thank you so much for having this discussion. I think this is very helpful to men to kind of see the back and forth from both points of view. And I thank you for having enough courage and willingness to share so we can help people have stronger marriages. So thank you so much.
A pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah. All right, everyone. With that, reflect on this. Think about where you need to work, men, where you need to grow. And if you are feeling very stuck, please reach out to me. This is what I do. I train men to thrive in their marriages and be leaders in business. And if that's what you're looking for, I'm your guy. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. Take care, everybody.
Bye.